Welcome to Time Capsule, where we explore the meaning of life in the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Vanessa.
I'm Joerenz.
Today we have our high school teacher and author, Peter Vanderberg. Welcome, Mr. Vanderberg.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
We're so glad to have you on.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself as a teacher and author?
Sure. So first of all, it's such a pleasure to be here with you two guys who I remember from working with you guys at St. John's Prep. So I was a teacher at St. John's Prep, and I have since moved to a school on Long Island called Chaminade High School, where I continue to be an English teacher. I'm actually the chairperson of the English department there. And as far as writing goes, I'm primarily a poet. I have actually a chapbook. You kind of hit me at sort of like the sweet spot in my career, because I have a chapbook coming out now. It'll be released in May, which is just a short collection of poems. And then, very soon, a full-length collection of poems also coming out from two different small literary presses. Finishing Line Press is doing the chapbook, and Black Centipede is doing the full length. So I'm also going for a PhD. I'm a student again, which is a bit of a shock for me, humbling experience. I'm going for my PhD at St. John's University, but loving being a student again. But it is humbling, and I think it's actually good for me as a teacher, because I think I may have forgotten what it was like to be a student with all those assignments and the pressures and the desire to understand and to communicate clearly your ideas. So I think I feel a little bit more compassion for my students this year than in the previous year.
If you don't mind me asking, what made you interested to get your PhD?
I've always, I've been thinking about it I'm almost ashamed to say it's so long. I just sort of was putting it off. There was always some reason why I didn't want to get it. Not enough time, would it cost too much? But I do love being a student, honestly. College, even high school, I started to realize in high school that it wasn't all just boring and meaningless assignments at some point. I don't remember exactly when, but reading was really that thing that moved me beyond the classroom. So, I get an assignment. Actually, I remember the book was called All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't know if you guys have read it, but I think I was a junior when I read it, and it was obviously there's the assignment, you got to read a certain amount of chapters, but at some point it took on its own life, and I was reading it for myself, and it just totally blew my mind. And that's, and then also some of my friends, actually Mr. Booth, who you guys are familiar with, we just started he was into philosophy and reading as well, so we would kind of like talk about these things. I'm talking about back in high school. Did you want the long story? The long reason why? So anyway, reading, writing, talking about these things has always been a passion of mine. So I went for my MFA in creative writing because I fell in love with poetry. Actually, when I was in the military, I was in the Navy for 4 years, and writing really was part of my kind of survival process through that. Not that I was tortured or anything. I had a perfectly fine career, but there's a lot of times when you have to work through things that you're not maybe comfortable with, and of course, just being far from home and family and friends, there's a lot of time when you have to like kind of come to terms with that. So writing really helped me through that. So then I went for my MFA, loved it. That was finished. Went through my, I've been teaching at St. John's, and thinking about a PhD. And then at Chaminade, I teach a class that students get college credit at St. John's University. Okay. So what St. John's does is, for those teachers, they send these vouchers that are like, you could take a free class at St. John's if you want. Thanks for teaching. Okay. So I was like, you know what, maybe it's time to like just give it a shot. They've been awesome, really. Honestly, I can't say, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with St. John's University, but so helpful in guiding me and helping me and trying to make it work for me. So it's been good.
Getting into the first question here is, what inspired you to take on this profession of yours?
Teaching. God, it's funny. I remember the night I was talking to some friends in a bar when I was at Fordham. I guess we were seniors. And I was already committed to the military because I did ROTC, so I knew I was going to be in the Navy for 4 years. But I realized, like, you know what, I think I want to be a high school English teacher. And it was like this sort of kind of hazy epiphany. But you know what inspired me to pursue that? It was those classes in high school that, you know, I hope you guys had those experiences at St. John's where the conversation in the classroom really just gets you going and you're excited, and there's an interchange of ideas and you're understanding other people in different ways, and that just made me feel so alive, and it felt like really meaningful work. So you know, when I got out of the Navy, that was it. I was like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try to be a high school teacher, English teacher. And I got my first job at Kellenberg, actually. That's where I met my wife. And then I had moved out to Astoria, which I still love passionately. It's such a great town. And then I started working at St. John's Prep, worked there for 11 years, loved it. Taught a bunch of different things. I taught art, as you know. I taught US history and English also.
I remember back in St. John's, you were also in creative writing. Do you still get involved? Are you still involved with creative writing?
Yes, that was such a great class. God, I loved working there. So we don't have a creative writing elective at Chaminade, but I do bring creative writing into my class quite a bit. I teach juniors, so it's British literature. And just one of my favorite things to do with the literature is to try to get the students to feel like they can be in conversation with these writers through their own work. I don't want them to feel like there's this sort of canon of literature, these greats that exist, you know, that they were like sort of these demigods of writing, you know, like you can also write, you know, like you can critique these writers, you can write in response to these writers. And if I can do one thing to any student or for any student, it would be to empower them to feel like their voice is legitimate and has power and should be heard. You know, which is kind of like what you guys are doing with this podcast, right? Like, you know, give people a voice, give them a chance to say their story. And hearing, the more stories we can hear, I think the better for everybody, just in terms of knowing each other and feeling empathy for each other.
And just going back to what you were saying about like students being afraid to sort of critique writing because they might think it's like, you know, these huge big writers or they're like demigods. That's definitely something that resonated with me, and I know other students when we were in high school, and it took me a long time to sort of come over that hurdle. And I think part of it is actually like what you were saying, like trying to give a voice to, you know, it's sort of like trying to find that voice inside yourself to sort of be able to critique sort of like the things around you, and also being able to find that sort of writing style that you have. Right. So it's you know, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this point. I think I'm rambling a little bit.
It's a lot. It's a big idea. You know what, I think also when if I can teach my students, I shouldn't say teach, because they have the ability within them, encourage them to critique William Blake, critique, you know, find fault if you want with William Wordsworth, you know, these sort of like seminal writers of British literature, right? I'll often say in class, you know, disagree with me. Here's an idea. This is something I think about this poem. Disagree with me. Somebody come up with an alternate point of view. Get comfortable with disagreeing with others and critiquing others, respectfully, of course, right? And then I think maybe that helps students feel like they don't have to have the perfect thing to say before they say it, right? Okay. You can share a work in progress. You can say an idea that you're kind of working out currently. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's where a conversation can happen, right? If it's just people presenting perfect ideas, then how do you penetrate that? How do you enter into that conversation?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like going back to what Joerenz was talking about, like about having a voice. I just generally, just the whole entire experience of like being creative writing class in general, like from writing. And I remember, I think this was during this, I think the senior year, where I think our group did some kind of like zombie asylum crap of a video. And but I will admit that actually got me started into like in film. So wow. Yeah, so that actually gave me a good, I guess, a beginning platform on becoming like having a voice in like in getting into film. So yeah. Like I'm now in what's it called? I'm I'm in film studies in Queens College. So
That's excellent.
yeah,
That's where I went for my MFA. It's such a great school.
I
Love
remember you
Queens
mentioned
College.
you told me that when I spoke to you back in St. John's. Yes.
Great. Good for you. Awesome.
So now let's say you were pursuing a different path. What career do you think you'd be doing, and why would you be doing it?
Such a fun question. So it actually, when I, obviously, you guys sent me the questions just to take a look at beforehand. And I saw this one. I was like, oh man, reminded me of, again, being in high school. I don't think you guys had to do this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was in high school, I mean, this is back in the 90s, right? I'm an older guy. So one of the things the guidance department would do, they gave us this sort of standardized test where we'd kind of fill out bubbles, with our pencils, and then we'd get a report that supposedly told us what careers would be good for us.
Yes.
And mine said park ranger.
Oh, jeez.
That career? I mean, that seems like sort of summer work, and then I'm kind of homeless for most of the year. But on the other hand, I was weirdly attracted to the idea. So I sometimes wonder if I should have been a park ranger. I do love going to parks and national parks in particular. Well, not that I've been to a bunch. Acadia in Maine is the only national park I've been to, but it's just one of my favorite places in the world. So maybe park ranger. Maybe this is another funny story. When I was in the military, I was going into the Navy, my grandmother, of course, wanted to keep me safe. And she's always saying, come home. What are you doing going all around? What are you, crazy? Stay home. We need you here. So I was like telling her I wanted to be maybe a pilot, or, maybe I don't know, submarines or ships or something. And she said, why don't you try to be a tugboat captain? Tugboat duty's great. You'd be in New York Harbor. You're close to home. You can come home for dinner. And I was like, Grandma, that's great. I want to be a jet pilot. I want to be amazing. Now I wonder if that would have been actually brilliant. Tugboat captain.
Well, I'm sure that that will give you a lot of travel opportunities. So
Tugboat captain?
Probably.
Yeah, I guess around the harbor. I don't know how far they go, but it's anytime I go over the bridge and I see a tugboat, I'm like, man, I wonder if I should have been a tugboat captain, like Grandma said. Yeah, but I'm so happy being a teacher. I do feel blessed that I found a career that I love, I enjoy. I feel like it's meaningful work. I really don't know that I would want to do anything else.
Yeah. So we're now at the segment of the show where we like to call past, present, and future.
Okay.
How do you see yourself now, and how does it compare to yourself 5 years ago?
Okay. So 5 years ago, I had more hair. My hair has been migrating from my scalp for some years now. No, 5 years ago, I was working at St. John's. I was a senior dean. Really loved doing that. I was thinking about getting a PhD, but definitely not ready to take the leap. And my youngest son was born. So, the house was a little bit quieter and then got really loud. Yeah, so I have 4 kids, and my youngest Dylan is 5 now, and an amazing and crazy young man. So that was me 5 years ago. How do I see myself now? Is that going into that? Okay. So now, like I said, I'm in the PhD, very happy with that. I'm very busy, but in a good way. So I have, I started a small press about 11 years ago. And that's kind of in full swing now. I'm publishing chapbooks, I'm writing. I have 2 books coming out, which I can't believe that they're happening at the same time. Going for a PhD. I'm very, very busy. My life is very much full, but all in good ways. So I'm in a really good place. Very busy. Sometimes I wonder if I'm taking on too much, but it's my cup overflows is sort of how I feel at this point.
How will things be for you in 5 years?
In 5 years, I'm going to be so wealthy that I can just provide for everyone. Well, in 5 years, hopefully I'll be graduating from the PhD. Hopefully I'll still have my job, and I'll be doing that. I don't know. I don't know that I'll be doing anything super different. Graduating will be a huge accomplishment. I'll feel very happy and proud of that. But just keep writing. I hope I'm writing more. I always hope. I'm always trying to have more time to write. Keeping up with that. I'll check in on you guys, see how you are in 5 years, if you're famous at that point, more famous. Yeah, maybe another dog. We just got a
Aw,
puppy.
that's cute.
So I know that during these pandemic times, a lot of people have, been confined to, their houses, and they found, it's been hard for people to find things to do. But one of the most common activities has been taking on writing. So do you have
Mm.
any tips for people who want to get started on writing, who might not know where to start, or might be getting stuck, like having
Yeah,
writer's block?
sure. God, writer's block is one of the main things I try to work through with my students. A couple of quick tips. First, get yourself a notebook and a pen that you like. Something that can fit in your pocket, something that you can always have with you. And I think a lot of it is just habit, just get used to, try to find a time in the day where you can sort of attach writing. So for me, I have to have a cup of coffee to start off the day. So I'll always have my notebook with me open while I'm drinking coffee. And just, it's so cliche advice, but if you want to write. I try to tell my students, if you want to be a writer, I had a hard time. I think most writers probably go through this, but you have a hard time sort of claiming the identity, right? It's very difficult at first to be like, I'm a writer out, publicly. It feels false or something. But, what is a writer? A writer is a person who writes every day. So if you write every day, you are a writer. And it doesn't even matter what you write, like write down what you dreamed about, write down the things you want to accomplish that day. Write down a prayer, write down a list of things you'd like to write about. Just if you just write for 10 or 15 minutes every day, it really does take on a life of its own. And of course, reading goes closely with that. So I always have a notebook open while I'm reading, whatever I'm reading, because inevitably reading sparks an idea. I think if it's good writing, it should get you thinking, and thinking with the text is something that I try to teach my students. Like if you're reading something, don't just be passive. This is just entertainment. You're on a beach. Of course, there's a place for that. Have the notebook and the pen with you as often as possible if you want to be a writer. If someone says, "Oh, what do?" You could sit and start saying, "I'm a writer," and then say, "Oh yeah, really? What do you write?" And just take out your notebook and kind of like hit them on the top of the head with it. I write this. Boom. Yeah, I think that's my initial advice for wannabe writers.
Off the top of your head, do you have any favorite like articles that you have written that you remember?
Actually, well, I'm a poet, right? So that's primarily what I write, but I'm very interested in like creative nonfiction, memoir, short essays. And I did have something published in an online journal called Critical Read that was about the pandemic. And the topic of the essays is, how does visual art, how is that important in your life? And last spring everybody was homeschooling, we were all kind of like bouncing off the walls. So I started doing drawing time with my kids, and it was an essay about that. And I think that was a good. I was kind of proud of that because it was my first sort of nonfiction piece in a decent literary journal online.
Do you try to pass on like the creative writing influence over to your children?
Oh God, this is such an interesting question. Yes, of course I do. I mean, but I'm very sensitive to I don't want to like force anything because then it's going to backfire completely. But I'm always buying my kids like notebooks and pens and be like, oh, maybe you want to write something. I don't know. I'm just saying, give it a shot. My daughter's very creative. She writes. But if I pulled her in here and said, oh, tell them what you're writing about, she'd say, Dad, I don't write. So it's like, you have to be very gentle with, when you're encouraging kids. Drawing too, I try to get them to draw, and if we go on a walk or something, I'll be like, bring your notebooks, maybe we can find something to draw. Mostly I just want to kind of present things that I hope they'll associate with good times, good memories, and then maybe something will catch and kind of stick with them. I don't care what it is, whatever it is. Like I do believe that everybody should have some creative outlet, like whatever it is, something that you make that you want to reach other people with, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's very true. So we've talked about daily habits that writers should take on. What principles do you live your life by?
Great question. My grandfather would always say, can't means won't. This was one of his sayings. can't means won't, and it doesn't really make sense. And I used to say that in class sometimes, and a very intelligent young student said, no, it doesn't. It can't means cannot. It's a contraction. I'm like, okay, but just philosophically speaking, the idea is that if you say you can't do something, think about it in terms of, well, are you really trying to do it, right? What it really means is you're not trying, you won't do it. So I think about that when I have an idea like, oh, do I want to do this? Like the PhD, right? I mean, I certainly put it off for years, but I was saying I can't. And then eventually I realized, like, you know what, you're just not trying. Like you're not trying to make a space for it. So now I'm going for it. And another thing is, that's coming back to that sort of writing practice idea. Daily work, I think, is the goal in some sense, right? If you want to do something or attain some end, some goal, the path is the thing, right? The daily writing for 15 minutes a day in a notebook. I want to be a writer. That sounds like a big distant goal that you'll someday like cross the finish line and you're suddenly a writer. It happens in those daily practices. And also empathy, like especially, I'm actually tired of hearing about like these challenging times and these crazy days. Like I feel like the days have always been crazy in a way. And I think the antidote for so many of our problems, seeing other people, feeling their humanity, I think is so important. Yeah, almost any issue I can think of that kind of tears this country apart, I feel like empathy could be a beginning to consolation for that issue.
You always mention about your family, right?
Yes.
What are you most grateful for?
Well, certainly my family. Good lead in. No, yeah, of course my family, especially lately, like we don't see other people really for the most part. So, but we still have fun, like there's 4 kids, we got a cat, we got a dog, my wife and I were home. So, if we want to turn it up, all we need to do is like put on some music, break out the karaoke machine, and you'd think we'd be having a party in our house. It's tough sometimes too, right? With a lot of personalities in the house, it can get tense. But family, of course, I draw my strength from my family, of course. And I'm thankful for writing. I'm thankful that I have something that I can turn to. Like prayer. It is prayer. I really do think of it as a sacred experience. And I'm glad I found that in my life as well. And I'm thankful for you guys. Honestly, I was so impressed when you contacted me, and it's so great to see you out in the world doing something meaningful, creating, right? Sharing stories. This is what makes everything work. I think this is what can bring us together as a country. I hope.
Agree with that.
Yeah.
It's always good to try to reconnect with people that we haven't seen in such a long time. So.
Yeah. Thank you for reaching out.
Of course.
Now we've come to the question of the show that matches the title. If you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
Oh man. Well, I mean, in some ways, I think my books are essentially a time capsule. It's my way of trying to keep that conversation going long after I'm gone. When I read somebody else's work, I often think like, what, this is written by someone who lived maybe hundreds of years ago, but they were humans. They had feelings. They had good days and bad days. And it's interesting to connect with somebody across distances like that, time and space. So I guess that's a little egocentrical though, to put my own work into a time capsule.
No, not at all.
Maybe it'll ensure my fame. They're like, oh wow. Yeah, so I would definitely put some of my books in a time capsule. I think I might put a blank notebook in there also. Maybe that'll inspire them to whoever opens it up, be like, oh, maybe I'll start writing myself. And maybe a record of my favorite band is Bon Iver. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them at all. Justin Vernon. I'm just like so into that music lately. So I'll put a blank notebook, Bon Iver, and whoever opens the time capsule 100 years from now can put on a record and start writing.
Oh, what kind of music is Bon Iver? I've never heard of him.
Yeah, never have I.
I guess alternative. Justin Vernon is the lead guy, and he's collaborated with so many different people. He recently collaborated with Taylor Swift. Check it out. They're a little weird. It's an acquired taste, but they're just so good, good.
I'm always looking for new music, so I'll definitely check it out later.
Check it. I hope you enjoy.
Is there any other favorite music you listen to, like to get you into like the creative flow?
Oh man, sure. Definitely depends on the mood. Bon Iver, huge. I don't know if you ever heard of Citizen Cope, also really good. Classical music, of course. I'm not a connoisseur, but Chopin would be, Chopin's nocturnes in particular is like something I can just listen to forever. Again, not a connoisseur, right? These are pretty obvious names, but like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, I'll put those on. I could sit down with a notebook for hours listening to that. Actually, I have a really good friend who also went to St. John's Prep, Matt Susich. His music is phenomenal. He's a musician. He's writing and performing in the city. We had a really good, close group of friends. We're still close friends, but we don't see each other as often as we'd like. But Matt was in there, and excuse me, Mr. Booth, Bill Kiernan, who's a teacher at St. Anthony's High School, and my brother James, who's a visual artist. And we all would get together and talk about things we were doing, right? So James was painting, my friend Jay was studying philosophy, I was reading and writing, and Matt was writing music. Bill was a philosopher and a writer. And so when I listen to Matt, it kind of brings me back. Like, we're still in conversation, we're still making work, and it kind of inspires me to write as well.
Seeing that you have achieved so much already, is there anything you want to add to tell our viewers, like any upcoming projects that you have in the works?
Well, I'm a little bit between things. I tried to do some writing yesterday, and it was kind of difficult, but counting my blessings, I have these 2 books coming out. The chapbook by Finishing Line Press is called Celestial Navigation, and the full length from Black Centipede is called Drown Proof. This is me gratuitously plugging my books coming out. Looking forward to seeing those physical copies and maybe having some readings and events in the area. And I'm also publishing some chapbooks by up and coming writers, through Ghostbird Press. So look for those titles. You can find Ghostbird Press on Twitter if you're interested. So yeah, looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to my next project. It feels good to have a project. So I'm looking forward to kind of finding that and building that and getting lost in that again, the way I had done with these previous books.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about Ghostbird Press?
Sure. So it's a very small literary press. We publish poetry, short fiction. I published a play. It's a chapbook press. So a chapbook's a short collection, usually about 30 pages. And I try to mix visual art with literary work. My brother's a visual artist. I have 2 brothers that are visual artists, actually, and I've collaborated with both of them at different times on covers or internal art. Sometimes I'll get a writer who is also an artist or knows an artist, so I'm really happy to make that work. I had one of my former professors did a work, and his wife is an artist, so that was so cool to work, bring those 2 together, those 2 visions together into a single chapbook. We put out about 2, maybe 3 collections a year, and in the good old days pre-COVID, we'd have an event. Actually, there was you guys remember Fatty's Cafe in Astoria by any chance?
I'm not familiar.
Such a great place. They've I think they closed their doors a while back, but we would have a little event at Fatty's. A couple years back, we had an event at Poet's House in Lower Manhattan. So looking forward to that, getting back to those kind of community building moments where people come together and listen to readings and talk about their work. Yeah.
You could probably still do a virtual event, right?
Definitely, yeah. That I will be doing that probably this spring. Again, if you're interested, Ghostbird Press, just at Ghostbird Press on Twitter. I don't really do Facebook. There's an Instagram too, but I'm very rare to get involved with it. I'm just an old guy. I'm just still getting my Twitter under me. So yeah, we'll announce any events at Ghostbird Press on Twitter.
All right. Well, Mr. Vanderberg, thanks so much for being a part of our time capsule. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And please make sure to follow Ghostbird Press. Tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule.
Thank you guys so much.